What if I told you that the only thing separating you from mastering any subject is not intelligence, but the way you learn? Most people believe that learning means memorizing facts or cramming information into their heads. But great minds know something different. There is a technique so simple it almost feels obvious, yet it forces the brain to absorb and truly understand knowledge at a level few people ever reach. Think about this. Someone who unraveled some of the greatest mysteries of modern physics wasn't known for making things complicated, but for making them simple. His ability was so rare that he could explain the most complex phenomena of nature as if he were telling a story to a child. And that's exactly where the secret lies. Mastery doesn't depend on raw genius, but on a mental process so powerful that anyone can apply it. And here's the surprising truth. You can use this exact method to learn absolutely anything you want. Languages, science, business, skills that today might seem impossible to you. The secret isn't endless hours of blind effort or constant memorization. The secret is forcing your mind to reorganize information in a way that it can never forget. In this video, I'm going to show you step by step how to apply the most powerful learning technique in the world. And by the end, you'll realize that your brain is not just a storage box for facts, but a living machine designed to simplify, connect, and create meaning. And once you learn how to use it, you'll discover that mastering anything isn't just possible, it's inevitable. So stay with me, because what you're about to learn may change not only how you study, but how you see your own potential. Let's begin now. Imagine you're facing a difficult subject. It could be physics, math, economics, programming, a new language, anything that feels out of reach. Most people look at that challenge and think, I need to memorize all of them. But here's the first shift. Don't start with memorization. Start with simplification. Choose one single concept, just one. Write down what you understood on a sheet of paper as if you were explaining it to a 7-year-old. Use simple words, short sentences, everyday examples. When you do this, something powerful happens. You force your mind to abandon complicated language and search for clarity. That's the first shock. Because as you try to simplify, you begin to uncover gaps that were hidden before. That feeling of, I think I know, disappears, and you see exactly where you don't. It's uncomfortable, but it's liberating. You're no longer fooling yourself. You're facing knowledge head on. Imagine, for example, that you're learning fractions. Instead of starting with formal definitions, you take a pizza. You explain, if I cut it into 2 equal parts, each piece is 1/2. You didn't mention numerators or denominators, but you captured the essence. It's simple, it's clear, it's memorable. And what happens here is extraordinary. When you translate the complex into the simple, your brain builds deeper connections. Information stops being something distant and becomes part of your natural vocabulary. You may not realize it, but you are teaching yourself at the most fundamental level. This is the first step to forcing your mind to learn anything. Always begin by simplifying. Don't accept the illusion of complexity, because when you can explain something simply, it means you have truly begun to understand. Now that you've simplified the concept, it's time to take the step that separates those who merely read from those who really learn. Teaching. Pay close attention here, because this is the secret. Teaching doesn't mean having a classroom, students, or a blackboard. Teaching means explaining out loud as if you were talking to someone curious who has never heard about the subject before. It could be a friend, your phone's camera, a mirror, or even an empty chair. The important thing is to turn thought into words. When you try to teach, something magical happened. The brain is forced to organize ideas in a logical sequence. And suddenly, what seemed clear in your mind starts to fall apart. You hesitate, forget a part, can't find the right words. That moment is not failure. It's the exact point where learning happens. It's the moment when the illusion of knowledge dissolves and your mind reveals its gaps. Instead of running from this discomfort, dive into it. Every time you try to teach and realize you can't, you've received the gift. You've discovered the hole in your understanding. And only when you see that hole can you fill it. Think about how children tell stories. They aren't afraid to stumble, invent words, or repeat themselves. And precisely because of that, they learn so fast. When you put yourself in that role, teaching something you don't yet fully master, you activate the same natural mechanism of accelerated learning. This is the second step. Teach in order to learn. The more you teach, the more you understand. Knowledge doesn't solidify inside your head through silent reading, but through the noise of your own words. Speaking organizes, clarifies, and locks it in. Remember, you're not teaching to impress, you're teaching to discover. Because with every explanation, your mind rebuilds itself, and what once seemed unreachable begins to become part of you. You simplified. You tried to teach, and in the process, you found gaps. The next step is to return to the material, review it, and simplify again. This cycle is what forces your mind to transform information into true knowledge. Here's a practical example. Imagine you're learning about gravity. At first you write, gravity is the force that attracts bodies to one another, proportional to their mass and inversely proportional to the square of the distance. It sounds fancy, it sounds technical, but did you really understand it? Now try to explain it to a child. Gravity is like an invisible magnet that pulls everything downward. The bigger the object, the stronger the pull. That's why the Earth keeps the moon orbiting around it. Done. Instead of a complicated definition, you now have a simple mental image. That is the power of review. You take what you couldn't explain well, go back to the source, find the new example, swap difficult language for simple images, and then try again. It's like polishing a rough stone until it becomes a diamond. And here's the key. Every time you review and simplify, your mind reorganizes itself. What used to be fragile becomes solid. What used to be a memorized sentence becomes real understanding. You no longer rely on pairing, because now you understand. This is the third step to forcing your mind to learn anything. Review until you can explain it simply. Because only when you can say it in clear words have you truly learned it. If you've simplified, taught, and reviewed, you're already far ahead of most people. But there's still a higher level, creative repetition. It's not repeating for the sake of repeating. It's repeating in different ways as if you are playing with the knowledge. The brain loves variety. When you present the same idea from different angles, you build multiple connections. It's like reinforcing a bridge with many pillars. The more angles, the stronger the understanding. Here are clear examples. You learned about electricity. After simplifying and reviewing, tell the same explanation 3 ways. First with wires and light bulbs, then by comparing it to water flowing through pipes, and finally by sketching it on paper. Each version locks in a different piece of the concept. Studying history. Don't just recite dates, turn it into a story. A hungry people overthrowing an unjust king, the French Revolution. Then tell it as a stage play, then as a newspaper headline. Learning a language. Explain the same sentence in different contexts. See the pattern? The content stays the same, but the form changes. That shift forces the brain to create new links. The result, you don't just understand, you become able to use the knowledge in any situation. And here's the detail almost no one notices. When you play with learning, the brain treats it as pleasure. Pleasure activates memory systems far more strongly than obligation. That's why children learn by playing. They're not just accumulating, they're enjoying. So the 4th step is this. Don't be a mechanical repeater. Be a creator of versions. Each new way of explaining is a layer of cement that sets the knowledge permanently. But now pay close attention, because there's a moment when many people quit. Error. You try to simplify, explain, review, and you still stumble. The words don't come out. The logic slips. The explanation fails. Most people take that as a sign of failure, but the truth is exactly the opposite. Error is the compass that points the way to real learning. Think about it. When you make a mistake, it doesn't mean you know nothing. It means you found the exact point where your mind hasn't yet built a solid bridge. And that's precisely where you should work. The error isn't an obstacle, it's the map. Imagine you're studying probability. You try to explain why the chance of getting heads or tails is 50%. The first time you say, because there are two options and one of them has to happen. It sounds logical, but it's incomplete. When you stumble, you realize you need to understand more about independent events. The mistake exposed the gap. Now, when you review, you come back stronger and your explanation evolves. A coin has no memory. Each toss is independent, which is why the chance is always 50-50. Another example, you try to explain photosynthesis and forget to mention sunlight. In the discomfort of that mistake, you're forced to review. Next time, you never forget again, because the failure became a permanent mark of memory. And here's the key. Every mistake is a rehearsal. The more you stumble while explaining, the more raw material you have to turn into clarity. It's like a sculptor who, with each wrong strike, discovers the outline of the stone until the figure emerges. When treated with intelligence, error becomes a trigger for progress. But to achieve that, you need a scientific attitude, curiosity instead of judgment. Ask yourself, what exactly caused me to get this wrong? By answering, you strengthen the very connection that was weak before. This is the fifth step. Don't fear mistakes. Embrace them. They don't prove your inability. They prove you're pushing the limits of your mind. And it's at those limits that true learning happens. Now, to lock this in your mind, type in the comments, "I choose to learn without limits." This isn't just a comment. It's your commitment to your own mind. When you write it down, you send a direct command to your brain, and it begins working in your favor. Think of it as the first step in your reprogramming, declaring to yourself that there are no barriers to what you can learn. Now, you already know the path. Simplify, teach, review, play, and turn mistakes into tools. These are the steps that force the mind to learn anything. But there's one last ingredient that can't be ignored: hard work. Yes, there is method. Yes, there is technique. But without real effort, nothing grows. The brain is like a muscle. It must be strained. It needs resistance to develop. There is no genius without discipline. The truth is that every great mind worked hard, harder than most thought possible. And that's what gave power to the method. What changes when you apply this formula is that effort stops being empty. You no longer spend hours lost in underlines or meaningless repetition. Every attempt to explain, every corrected mistake, every creative review builds a solid step. And step by step you climb until you master the impossible. In the end, the formula is simple but powerful. Simplify, teach, review, play, fail, and above all, work hard. There is no magic trick. There is discipline. There is method. And there is you putting it all into practice. When you commit, the impossible starts to feel inevitable, because the mind, when forced the right way, expands. And a mind that expands never returns to its original size. So here's the challenge. Choose a topic today, any topic. Take a sheet of paper, simplify it, explain it, review it, play with it, embrace the mistakes, and do it with discipline every day. You'll discover in practice that there are no limits for someone who works hard with intelligence. This is the real secret. It's not just studying. It's studying the right way with enough intensity to turn your mind into an unstoppable force. If this video opened your mind, leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next lessons. And tell me in the comments, what's the first thing you're going to try to learn using this technique? I read every comment. Thank you for watching until the end. Stay well and see you in the next.